Previously on Kirby Month. Oh, is that how you do it? Ooh. I really can't think of a punchline for that. Kirby's Adventure is the first console Kirby game, and they really upped the ante. There are more levels, more enemies, more characters. Everything's in color. Kirby is now canonically pink instead of white. There's more of a story, but the biggest change of all is that Kirby has a brand new ability that will become staple for all the games to come, the ability to copy certain enemies' powers by eating them. This changes the nature of the game drastically, and I know this is an odd thing to say, but I'm not sure it was a totally good idea. Having just beat Kirby's Dream Land, I just gotta say, this game isn't as tight game mechanic ways. It doesn't mean it's bad, obviously, it's just somewhere else on the tightness scale. Let me rattle off the downsides of this new mechanic so I can spend the rest of the video praising everything, because it's definitely a good game. You have a myriad of new abilities at your disposal with all these enemy powers you get, and they're all fairly unique from one another. First of all, you know that there is no way they could design every single level around every single possible ability that you could have. So immediately there's a problem. Too much choice. If you have an ability, you can try to keep it or throw it away as soon as you find another enemy with an ability you want, but many areas in levels require a specific power to get extra lives or health items or even secret switches, which I'll get to a bit later. Some of the time, the enemy with the required ability is just right there, and you can eat him up and get the tool you need to do the thing. Other times the enemy was earlier in the level, and you needed to keep that ability for as long as you could before you get to this point. The problem here is, which ones do you keep? There's usually quite a few different enemies before you get to a part of the level where you need a specific power, but you wouldn't know which one it was until you got there. It leads to mild annoyance. When I realize I fucked up and I can't go back, it's just not fun. In Dreamland, you always know there's a way to get to the secret because you always have the necessary tools at your disposal, but you can still fail at a puzzle. If you need to suck up a brick and then hold onto it and shoot it at a thing, you can miss the target, you can still fail at the puzzle, but it's all on you. It doesn't feel bad because it was totally your fault for missing the target. In Adventure, you just sometimes are not able to do things. Whoops. Oh well. Play the level again if you want, I guess. So yeah, that's the first problem. Another problem is that it's distracting. When you have an ability and you get hit, your ability falls out of you in the form of a star. You can attempt to suck the star up to regain the ability, but often that just distracts you from everything else that's happening on the screen. The majority of times I've died were due to me frantically trying to regain a power-up that I had lost, and not paying attention to incoming attacks. Anytime you fail to get the ability back, you feel like shit. You don't know how much you needed it further into the stage, and you just wasted so much life for nothing. It's honestly far more trouble than it's worth having a power to lose. It would be okay if getting hit lost you your power but not your health. That would be a good incentive to keep using them, but it seems like the incentive instead is that they're really cool. Which is true, they are really cool, but it's much easier to play the game when you don't have to worry about it. The main thing is it throws a wrench into the delicate balance of the game that leads to a lot of frantic moments that make me die. Thankfully, there are a lot of ways to get one-ups in the game through mini-games outside the levels, and I think that's a good time to segue into not talking about the downsides anymore. Now that we're on the NES, there's more space for pixels on the screen. Kirby is basically the exact same sprite, so he's much smaller in the screen. This means the movement had to be changed a little. Kirby now does have a dash, and instead of having to tap up to fly, you can just hold up and Kirby will flap real quick. These changes aren't perfect because dashing will often run you into enemies, and there are a few sections where you want to fly very carefully, but overall it's fine. It makes you feel a little faster. There's also a slide kick, which I never felt like using, which is probably just a mistake on my part. Unfortunately, the NES suffers from slowdown when too many things are on the screen. I don't remember that problem in Dreamland, but it's definitely more pronounced here. It can be occasionally helpful to be in slow motion, but most of the time it's just annoying. The graphics are very much improved, the feel of the locations is the same cutesy, whimsical, abstract stuff, and the color design is top-notch. Wonderful. I really like the dark rooms that you can illuminate with the light power. Also, Kirby changes his feet animation when standing or walking on a slope. How about that? There are much more levels in Adventure than in Dreamland, and I'm not going to go into every single one of them in depth like I did the last time, but let's just say they're pretty. There are 6 worlds, each with around 6 levels, and then a boss level. The formula for what has to be in a level is less strict. There isn't always a mini-boss, and there sometimes isn't any kind of boss at all, but instead a challenge or puzzle of some sort. Having an overworld is good and bad. It's good in that it allows for the existence of fun minigames to do for extra lives and points, but it's bad in the way that it splits up the adventure, which admittedly isn't much of a problem, but it feels more exciting when you're going from one level to the next without any abstractions like this. Ironically, Kirby's Dreamland felt more like an adventure than Kirby's Adventure does in this regard. One thing that's neat is that you can uncover areas of the overworld by hitting switches in certain levels, which hide extra minigames and power-up rooms where you can regain certain power-ups before you enter a level. This is particularly handy when it comes to boss levels, because the powers allow Kirby to deal damage much more often than normal, where you have to suck up a star or some sort of projectile and spit it back at them, making some encounters much easier, especially DDD at the end. Though what's annoying about that is if you die and lose your power, the closest power-up room is 2 whole worlds away. There may have been one hidden in the overworld that I had to unlock in one of the levels, but I didn't really feel like playing all of the levels over again on the off chance that I could find a switch that would uncover a portion of the map that may or may not house a power-up room, which may or may not have a power-up that I want to use to fight DDD. So I had to settle with a slow back and forth after each failed attempt, and I don't like that. Fuck it. Or I could just fight DDD without a power, which was very difficult, but that's what I did, and I'm really good at Kirby. The mini-games are great fun. You have the egg-eating minigame where you have to hold your mouth open with A and swallow eggs, but not bombs. There was always that one bomb that snuck through without me noticing, though. I'm looking through the footage. Yeah, fuck that. That's sneaky. Then there's the crane game where you have to try to position the crane at the perfect place to get the Kirby. This one is the easiest, because I did it a couple times. And then there's the Western quick draw shootout, where you have to fire after the enemy draws their pistol. It's real cute how they're just regular enemies with little hats. I love that. And the animation of Kirby spinning the gun around after is real cool as well. It's pretty hard though, I could never get the last one. These minigames are available to try only once, and the prize is an extra life or 2, or if not that, some points for your score, which is totally meaningless. Speaking of, after every level you get a chance to get a 1-up by pressing A at the exact right moment and flying upwards. The number 1 cloud grants you a life, and every cloud below gives you points, which are, again, meaningless. Points get you nothing. It's understandable that they would exist in this old-ass game, but I don't like it. It feels like I'm being placated, like I'm being talked down to, like everyone who ran the race gets a participation trophy. Just tell me I lost. I don't want points. They have no point. The boss battles were pretty unmemorable. I don't know why, I just don't remember any of them. Except the tree, because he was already in the first game, and that guy, because he was already in the first game. I don't know why those are more memorable. Maybe it's just because there were 4 of them. Anyway, moving on, that's just not whatever. The most memorable encounters were the Meta Knight minion fights. Meta Knight appears every so often to sick his cronies on you, and eventually, you get to fight Meta Knight himself. It's really cool seeing a recurring character pop up here and there. And what's even more interesting is that Meta Knight sometimes appears and throws you an invincibility candy. It makes you wonder what his angle is. He wants you to succeed, but he's forced to stop you? Or maybe he's testing your skills to see if you've got what it takes to beat the last boss. In any case, he's a mysterious character that I really want to see more of and learn more about, and if that wasn't intriguing enough, after you defeat him, it turns out he looks just like you. He's a Kirby, only dark. What a cool guy. Ah, Meta Knight, delicious. I like Meta Knight. And speaking of recurring characters, the story is the last thing in this game that is very much improved from the previous game. In Dreamland, DDD just took a bunch of food, and then Kirby beat the shit out of him and took it back. In this game, there's more at stake. King DDD stole the Star Rod. Star Rod? Which stops everybody from being able to dream. He then broke the rod and split it among his friends, which I find to be especially cute. It's not his generals that he gave it to, it's his buddies, his best friends he gave this to. Very cute. And Kirby has to gather all the pieces of the rod back together in order to restore Dreamland's dreams. Wow. And without going in exhaustive detail about the adventure, you do that. And then this happens. It turns out that King DDD and his friends were trying to save Dreamland by breaking the Star Rod. The Dream Spring had been corrupted by a nightmare. Oh no! This really is Halloween. And the rod was all he needed to regain full power. Now, a couple of things about this are interesting. Number 1, Meta Knight's angle becomes shadier. He wanted to stop Kirby, but he gave him the invincibility candies, so he was actually gunning for Kirby defeating DDD and putting the Star Rod back together. Could this mean Meta Knight was working with the Nightmare? Or could it be that he was testing Kirby to see that he was powerful enough to finish the job and defeat the Nightmare after releasing it? Number 2, all the bosses you killed were actually good guys, including King DDD, except he's not DD dead. Which raises the question of why Kirby wasn't clued into this plan. They could have used his help, right? Kirby's a good boy. Unless Kirby is a loose cannon that doesn't follow orders and just does whatever the fuck he wants. And number 3, I love it. This final fight against the Nightmare is fucking sick. You're in space, you're shooting stars out of the Star Rod, and the Nightmare's big and creepy, with nothing cute about him at all. Up till this point, every enemy and boss in the game has had some element of cuteness to them, but this guy is just a scary bad man, and you must kill him. Phase 1 of this fight is a shoot-'em-up section, kinda like the blimp boss from Kirby's Dream Land. There's a great sense of speed and urgency, and in fact, if you don't defeat Phase 1 fast enough, you crash into the ground. It's challenging you to keep your composure in a high-stakes, high-speed, climactic battle in space with Count Chocula. I love it. The game rules 20 out of 20. Look at that guy. It is a Dracula. Despite my complaints with the ability-stealing mechanic, Kirby's Adventure is really good, and you should play it, especially if you like Kirby, but just in general. And that's the end of the video. Yeah. Hello, it's me. This is Kirby Month. Every day, I'm going to be reviewing another Kirby game until there are no Kirby games left, or I can't be bothered to purchase anymore. I have a Patreon if you want to support my channel with money. Link is on the screen and in the description. Yes. I got a Twitter, I got a blog, I got all sorts of fucking links. Stay tuned next time for Kirby's Pinball, the next game that came out. Not at all as analysis heavy as this one, I'm sure.